Welcome back to the Sales Cadence Podcast. This is the podcast for everyone in sales, because everyone is in sales. We're all selling something. My name is Matt Sykes. I'm your host. I'm the author of the book Sales Glue and Converted. And if, like me, you're as passionate about helping people make truly epic buying decisions so that more people buy what you sell, great news. You're in the right place. My guest today, good friend of mine, someone I've known for a long time, and subsequently has come onto the podcast. He was the very first podcast I ever did, kindly came back a year later, and here he is. I think the only guest, Mr. Stefan Boyle, that I've ever had on 3 times. So you, my fine friend, you're a star. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, it's great to be here, Matt, and I feel very honoured that I'm here 3 times. It's a hat trick, is there? Not something I get very often these days, but it's great to be back and great to see you as always.
It's great to see you as well. We haven't really kept in contact as much over the last couple of years, but the great thing about our relationship, we're on the socials and we, message each other every now and again and thumbs up and emojis and all that kind of stuff. But the good thing about relationships with people like us, I think, is you can put it down for a while. When you pick it up, it's just the same as normal. So that's Absolutely. My feeling anyway. I would assume, hopefully, you agree.
Well, I guess I'm just jealous because every time I see you on socials, you're on the golf course. So.
I have to be really careful because I do like a little bit of golf, as you know, and I don't post that much on Instagram anymore. And if ever I do, it tends to be because I'm on the golf course and something funny has happened. And Some of my clients say to me, "Oh, you're turning up today, are you? You're normally on the golf course." And I think, shit, I've only actually played once in the last 2 weeks, but because you've seen, anyway, you get the idea with that. But a bit of golf. You don't play golf yourself?
I do, but I don't have the time at the moment. I've actually got, we've moved here about a year ago. There's actually a golf club about 200 yards up the road, which I've played twice actually in the past year. But it's a nice little golf course. It's nothing too fancy, but it's a bit of fun really. So it's one of those things. This year I said I'm going to play more golf like Matt, and I haven't done.
Mate, it's just a wonderful way to waste 4 hours if you can find that time in your diary. Not only is it good fun, but it's also really good for the brain and the mind. So all good stuff. So listen, thank you very much for carving out some time. We are going to basically have a bit of a fireside chat, a bit of a catch up. You and I, just so happens I'm going to stick this out on the podcast. But of course, we do want to navigate some of the waters of business. Maybe we'll touch on LinkedIn. I think because you've been in business a long time yourself, same as me. When did you first start working for yourself? I know you had the family business and you were in print. Folks, if you want to hear all about that, then go and jump on one of those 2 podcasts that Stefan and I did. Probably the first one back in 2018 is the one to listen to. That's not to short circuit your history, mate, but just to bring it up to speed in terms of actually self-employment. When did you first start?
It's probably coming up to 15 years, I think. As you said, I've had a long time in family business and running that. So in theory, it's been working for myself for a long, long time. But once I came out of the print industry and went into other things, that's when it wasn't family business. It was just me. So quite a long time and a lot of experiences. Some amazing, some not so. But that's life, and that's what helps you develop and learn.
100%. And so just to, caveat that point, because you've got those years of experience, I think I'd quite like to have a conversation about that because I'm just 10 years. I say just 10 years. 10 years feels like 50. I have come out of there for a short period of time, but predominantly speaking, I've always had my head in the sort of self-employment space. So I think that between the 2 of us, we can probably come up with some of the most grimmest stories ever, but also the highs as well. So maybe we'll touch on those. But I think let's kick this off. So obviously makes total sense for those people that haven't heard those 2 podcasts. Just bring me up to date with what's going on in the world of Stefan Boyle.
I think the poignant moment really was over the pandemic and the lockdowns, all those kind of things. And I just got a bit frustrated, a bit lost, if I'm honest. I'm not pretending I had a sort of a breakdown. I didn't, but it just really, after all the years of working and, all of a sudden we were at home. Luckily, the sun was shining, if you remember back to those weird times. But I just started trying new things in the business. And it was just maybe some apathy for years of trying and working hard and all those kind of things. When you try new stuff that is not working as well as you want it to, I just got to the stage where I said, I need to have a little bit of a time out, a rethink, a reset, whatever you want to call it, because you can't keep trying to do something that, firstly, you're not really enjoying because it was a tough market to crack, and basically it was in lead generation and doing that kind of stuff.
You had a team of folks working
Um,
for you as well, didn't you? You had
I had a
effectively
team
a
of
digital
people.
marketing
Yeah,
agency, right?
yeah. So yeah, a marketing agency in effect. It was focused on lead gen in various
Yeah.
different sectors, and it just became really frustrating. We did a lot of stuff on email, a lot of telemarketing, LinkedIn as well. But in terms of LinkedIn, it wasn't content stuff. It was pure hardcore DMs outreach on behalf of clients, and it just got very frustrating. I just had enough of it really. So I kind of like burnt the boats. One of those moments in life where I just can't keep doing this. I'm a bit miserable. I'm a bit frustrated. I've just had enough of this really. I've got to do something different. So I didn't really know what that was really. I'm thinking all the experience I've had, I've been in sales in essence. Everything you do as a business owner is sales oriented really, because that's the oxygen of your business.
Yeah.
Obviously, I've been in printing for a big chunk of my life, and I thought I always would be. That harks back to that first podcast episode, but I
Mm.
didn't anticipate, unfortunately, the changes in that industry that were dramatic, really, sadly. And obviously, been in marketing, and I needed to decide on what it was I was going to offer, who I was going to offer it to, and what did that service look like. And I didn't know the answers to that, so I took a little bit of time off just to maybe let my brain reset a little bit. And obviously, that didn't really matter because everyone kind of had some time off because they were stuck at home unless you were in
That's true.
critical services. We all had to step back a bit. So
Yeah.
that was quite healthy. And it was at that time I thought, what do I like doing? I know I like social media and I really like writing. It was at school. It was probably out of lots of bad subjects, my one sort of flag in the sand of stuff that I liked and enjoyed. I love reading. I love writing. That was my thing. So I thought, I'll just get onto LinkedIn and I'll just start writing stuff. I don't really know what it's going to be about. Um, I just thought I'll just share some of my experiences, my background, my stories, my thoughts, my ideas, and I'll try and see what feedback is and what happens. And I just committed to writing every day on LinkedIn, and it was quite interesting because, like everything you try, some stuff worked really well, some stuff didn't. Initially, there was no call to action, there was no offer, there was no service. I didn't really know where that was going to lead to. But I started thinking about this writing process, and I started asking questions of people, and people who engaged with my content, or people I knew. I just sent them little follow-up messages and said, how's it going? What's going on with you? How's things changed for you? And luckily, a few people went, "Oh, I've seen you posting a lot more recently. It's been interesting." I thought, "Oh, that's quite nice." And that kind of evolved as the conversations went, some just in DMs, some into actual phone calls, and a couple of actual face to faces where I just started talking to people and listening to what they're doing, what their issues were. And obviously, it all stemmed from LinkedIn. So a lot of the conversation came back to that point, and people said, I can see what you're doing on LinkedIn, and I can see you're getting engagement. I just don't really know how to do that. Is that something you could do? Maybe I could. Don't really know how that would work. So that is a long story. After a good few months of doing this, where I had lots of conversations, and then sounding people out of what that service would look like, what people are prepared to pay for it. There's loads of people out there who are prepared to pay a virtual assistant somewhere very small amounts of money to do really bad, rubbish
Yes.
content. I don't know, I'll just outsource it for like 8p a week and get someone to, make me an influencer. It doesn't really work unless you've got something incredibly unique, or you come across some kind of genius in the Philippines who is a creative expert. But I kind of worked out quite quickly that I had to go to people with budget, with money, in essence, who could afford to outsource this, who saw the value in it, who understood that this platform at the time was 750 million plus people. That's quite a lot of people, in
Mm.
quite a lot of countries, in pretty much, well, at the time I thought most markets, there was lots of B2C stuff I wasn't so sure, we can talk about it later, but that's changed quite a lot. So I just started refining who I was talking to, making it more of a targeted approach to people and starting more conversations. And to my amazement, some people started paying me to do their creative content on LinkedIn. I'm like, bloody hell, why didn't I think of this before? I love doing this. Um, I had to work out a process. I mean, I'd heard of a ghostwriter before when famous people want their autobiography doing. It isn't autobiography, it's some other bloke writing it or woman writing it for them.
Yeah.
And they just tell them stories and they record it and they put that into words for them and they pretend they've written it. So I'd
Yeah.
heard of that. Hadn't really heard of it as a thing on social media, on LinkedIn. I know there were social media managers kind of just managing the content and the follow up process, but writing for people and writing in someone's voice and their tone and all the rest of it, I had to kind of work that process out, which was actually really fun because the people I worked with were equally green on what that looked like. So that was kind of lucky. We kind of worked it out together. But like anything, you have to, I don't really like the term wing it, but you have to be confident that you've got some experience and knowledge and intelligence just to try and work out a system and a process. And of course, you never get it exactly right at first. I started out by having calls with people and making about 1 million notes, and it's quite exhausting. Then you have to refer back. And go, I can't actually read my writing. I was writing so many things down because that person spoke really quickly. Thinking that this isn't the best way of doing this. And then I thought I'll record, a video call. And then I realised that AI is, you've probably never heard of it. Apparently it's a new big thing.
Is
But
it? Oh no, I've not heard of it
no,
actually. Tell me more
there's
about
no
that.
talk of it. No one's mentioned it anywhere. But
Are we all supposed to
there's
be at work?
yeah, exactly. There's platforms now that record and transcribe these calls, so you've literally got the whole transcript of that conversation, which again at the time was fairly new to me. Now it's quite commonplace. But when I first started, I found this platform, thought, bloody hell, how's this work? It's give me any good. I thought it might give you a load of gobbledygook. Um, Luckily, I haven't had any Glaswegians or any really broad accents that even the AI goes, I can't understand him either.
Is anyone from Scotland listening? Hope don't take offence to that.
No offense. Anyway, you know what I mean. Strong accents. I thought, would it pick this up? But this technology is mind blowing.
Oh,
Um, so the reason for that is obviously I'm writing in a client's tone. So when I transcribe it, I can literally take the words out of their mouth. I can take snippets of paragraphs and then put that into a post. Obviously, make it a readable storytelling type format. But that's how I kind of in simple terms evolved this process, and it's great fun. I really love it because I think the beauty of it is I don't need 1,000 clients. What I like doing is like we're doing now, getting on the phone with a mate or face to face, coffee, beer, meal, call, whatever, and chatting about business.
yeah.
And I've always liked doing that. All my mates are in business. We always talk about what's going on with you, how's it going? Oh God, what's going on here? What are you doing about that? Oh, that's all the ups and downs, the topsy turvy life of running a business. And I've always enjoyed that. But now what I can do is make that a service and help people share those stories because you know what it's like, Matt. All the clients you work with, I'm sure they've got, maybe a facade. You look at that, you turn up at their offices and go, wow, this person's doing brilliantly. When you get under the skin and go, oh my God, to get here, we've been on the verge of bankruptcy. I've been bankrupt. I've come back twice. I've made 1 million. I've lost 1 million. I've done all this and all that sort of iceberg effect of all this beautiful stuff at the top, but all this different levels of carnage. But there's always a level of carnage, isn't there? Running a business, stuff you didn't expect. And the beauty of that relationship, some of the stuff I can't share on LinkedIn, they don't want to share. It's just the relationship that evolves that you really get under people's skin and they get to know each other. And it's a sort of, a great business. I learn from those people. Hopefully I try and give a bit back because I've got some experience as well. It's just really good fun and I really like it. So I wish I'd done it 10 years ago.
Well, I love it, and I can tell by the way you're talking about it how passionate you're about it. And one of the questions that I wrote down before we jumped on the call was, businesses tend to go through iterations, don't they?
Mm.
You've described some. I know mine has. you reach a point, I think, where whether it's through frustration or through actually this really makes me feel good to do this, but you kind of hone in on the one thing. And it
Mm.
sounds like ghostwriting for you is the one thing. It's the one thing that you are kind of, it's a bit like that motivational quote where, when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. It's almost as if right at this moment in time, ghostwriting for your clients is the thing that makes you happiest.
It really is. And here's the interesting thing, actually. When I think you've always had, by nature, a level of ambition, you want to improve yourself, see where, what the limits are, what you're able to achieve. And, I've had teams of people from sort of in the print business, sort of 50, 60 odd people, under my guidance, shall we say, under my management. Um, and that's had some amazing people, also had some not so amazing people. That's some of the challenges in running a business is getting the most out of your team. And there's a heck of a lot of skills you have that some I think I have, others I clearly haven't. I guess like all of us, we've got strengths and weaknesses. And sometimes, or my thinking was, do you know what, I'm my own boss now. I've got no employees. I've got a couple of people who do projects and things for me, and that's absolutely fine. That works brilliantly. But I kind of think, maybe that's the way it should be. I've got that control. I'm responsible, and a part of me really likes that. But then I'm working with a couple of clients now where this is potentially a little bit bigger. I
Mm,
focused on LinkedIn, where actually there's an opportunity to do multi-platform. And I'm kind of thinking about my offer, thinking some people love LinkedIn because a B2B platform, it is the number one place to be. You've got to maximize that. But you know what? I went to an event last night, which was a load of guys who, top of their game on LinkedIn, and they're all talking about video. And sort of the feeling is that LinkedIn is 2.5, between 2 or 3 years, say, behind Instagram, Facebook, etc. TikTok, the other platforms, but it's creeping up. It's trying these things.
okay.
The video stuff is starting to take over. Now, it seems crazy if you're going to create video, you're going to create written word, graphics, images, infographics, all that kind of stuff, just to have it in one place because like we see each other often on Instagram. I have the occasional flip through TikTok. I find some interesting. I thought TikTok was stupid dances and all that malarkey, but there's some amazing content on there as well, and all the other platforms. It seems crazy to say, well, I'm just going to put it on LinkedIn when we've got a library of stuff that will reach more people and draw them back into whatever channel you want them to. Why don't we repurpose that? And I'm now thinking maybe I could go back and I've got my offices in Watford still. I could go back into there and build a team or work remotely or whatever. And so I'm just trying to work that experience out at the moment, or that thought process. Do I build a team again, and do I look at building an agency rather than it just being me? I don't know the answer to that yet. I'll be interested to know because you've done similar stuff, and what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a really great point, actually, Stefan. And I still continue to be really comfortable just being me. I do have an idea in the future, not too distant future, to maybe license Sales Cadence as a sales training platform. I know there are plenty out there already, so I think there is definitely a potential to create some kind of business like that in the future. But I don't really have any aspirations to want to hire a team. I think you're probably connected with my son Ollie on LinkedIn, and
Yeah,
he's 23 now and he's in sales and he's doing really, really well. And so the natural evolution would be for him to come if he wanted to join in and maybe take over the business. But I think in direct answer to your question, I've never really had that desire to want to scale and grow and have a team of people. During COVID, when I went to work as head of sales for an organization and worked in a rapidly scaling, mature startup, I think there was about 15 in when I joined. And when I left 30 months later, there was 80. And so
wow.
they'd become a recruitment business rather than a business. And I just watched, first of all, fabulous people and bringing more people in. And, the whole culture in that organization was epic, a real blueprint for a successful business. But as well as I do, and from hiring your own people as in those previous roles that you had, back in print and then obviously in the marketing business, it doesn't take much for someone to come in who doesn't quite fit the mold for there to be these little disruptions going on. And I don't think you can ever control that. Personally, I'd just rather keep it as a one-man band and have a really successful lifestyle business that, creates a good amount of money so I can go and do the things I want to do. But that's really where I sit. If people want to, they will. So I actually think that you are driven by your nature as a business owner.
Yeah.
If you're that kind of person that just I need to grow this thing to a multi-million pound size of revenue, then that's what you're going to go and do. Just so happens
Yeah.
that's not me.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think I've always had that ambition to do that. I've always loved doing that. But then I started looking at the modern world we live in, the issues with employment and all that regulation that is not getting any, I don't say not getting any better, it's getting harder. There's more obstacles, there's more risk, I think, than
Yeah,
ever these days. And in early days of a business, that could break you if you get the wrong people who have got the wrong agenda. I know that's obviously down to recruitment, but maybe that's going back to, if I look back at my career, I think I've always recruited people I like and are like-minded, rather than I've got a good mate of mine he's about 2 weeks older than me. I've known him since I was 4 years old. I was with him last weekend. He's built a number of massive businesses now, and he's retired. He's sold up. He's extremely wealthy. It's extremely driven still, even though he's retired. He never bloody stops doing stuff. But he's very empathetic and very caring, but he's also ruthless, and he started in recruitment and
yeah,
built a big recruitment business,
yeah,
and sold out of that. But I just saw from that skill set he developed, he was really good at square pegs in square holes, round pegs in round holes.
yeah,
And if it was a not perfect fit, change that, get the right people, and very strategic in that.
yeah,
And I don't think I'm very good at that now. I made some really good decisions, but I also made quite a lot of bad ones that now could be a nightmare
yeah.
to rectify. Now, when you're starting a business and haven't got, massive investment or funds behind you that can say, right, I can pay that person off and do that. This is very negative, but I'm just looking at the risk of doing it, and I kind of think, do I need that aggro? But at the same time, it's that good cop, bad cop. That agency, that team, it doesn't have to be a multi-million pound business. It could be a 3, 4, 5, 10 person business. But I see people doing it in a similar space, and it's an itch that needs to be scratched, I feel. And the more I talk about it out loud, maybe it is a thing. But at the moment, I've just got to, get across that bridge. I'll just keep trying to build organically. And if that becomes a thing, it becomes a thing.
I think the final thing I'd say on that point is certainly from the information that I've gleaned from listening to other people who've been in that similar situation, and it being in that business that was 3 years old, I think, when I joined, but knowing how dynamic a team of 11 to 20 can be. Everyone's pulling in the same direction. Everyone helps out. If someone's got to work late, someone else will help them and work late as well. I think you sort of max out at that level of goodwill when you get bigger than that, if that makes sense. And so I think if you can create a business that's got up to a maximum of, say, 15, I think that from what I understand, that feels like a good place to be. Let me just move on. But before I move on, I just want to circle back to something you said. So you went out to dinner with a bunch of guys who are quite influential and, spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. And I think what I heard there, mate, was that we're sort of 2 years behind the other platforms as far as LinkedIn is concerned, and that video content, our feeds are full of video. I put one out myself today. And so what is the future? Did you hear any advice on what is the future for LinkedIn over the next 3 years, for argument's sake? Did you hear any nuggets that help you? Because obviously your business is front and center within this platform, right? And it's the written word. So was there a risk or a threat for you there?
You've got to evolve, Matt, haven't you? Whatever you do in life, you have to evolve and go with the flow. Now, you could have argued with social media, it's gone very visual, hasn't it? The likes of, who'd have thought 10 years ago that Instagram would be such a thing that it is now, that, we all scroll through, and that's obviously a lot of video in there, but obviously originally it was just mainly pictures.
You see a static picture now, you think, what? That's unique.
But if you'd pitched that to me as an idea 10 years ago, I'd say, "No, good luck, mate. That's not a thing." But I think the bottom line is multiple types of content are crucial. Now, different types of businesses have different needs in terms of their target market. What do people thrive off? Obviously, as a sales trainer, obviously you can talk one on one to a camera. Obviously, people with products can do products being used, demos of those products, clothing. It's good to be seen, and so I think there's an element of video, but I still think the written word is always in place. People still talk about, as sort of a copywriter, I've always loved long form copy, and lots of people say, "Oh, you've written too much there. It should only be two paragraphs." Or I get bored. Well, if you're bored by it, you're the wrong target
Correct.
audience.
100%.
There's lots of long form video that you can switch off after 5 minutes because
Yeah.
it's not your thing. That's fine, and I think that's from a sales point of view or marketing point of view, that is absolutely imperative that you appeal to your target audience and maybe not. Some people actively want to repel the people who they're not targeting. They deliberately become very obtuse towards the people they don't want to work with. But I still think you've got to test multiple types of content. Some people love carousels, some people love written content, some people love video. Some people like a combination, written word with a video or images. And I think that testing is key, but the one strong factor was you've got to have video. That could be 60 seconds, even 15-second video, up to 2 or 3 minutes, but lots of different types of shorts, a little bit longer video. I think that's going to be a lot of focus, but that doesn't mean it'll become the next YouTube. I still think you've got to have good copy for the foreseeable. Now, as I said, you've got to evolve and keep watching this space. But I still think lots of people like to consume the written word. Book sales, paperbacks are still selling like hotcakes, aren't they? For the right,
Yeah.
the right products, the right books. So I still think there's longevity in it.
Yeah, and I agree. I certainly agree as far as written word is concerned. I don't think, first of all, I think it's a skill which is really under the spotlight at the moment. I had a guy called, I don't know if you're connected with Conrad Sanders on LinkedIn, but he runs a copywriting company, a very good one. He's a very good copywriter. We were just challenging each other about AI, a bit like we've had a little discussion about it today. But all of a sudden you can just pump into ChatGPT. Can you write me a 350 word post for LinkedIn? And I know we don't need to go into this because we all know how this thing works, but it's only going to serve up what it can find on the web, and most of what it finds on the internet is pretty average. And so if you don't put your own source on top of that and refine it and improve it, you get caught out as being someone that uses AI to post, which is a real no-no. And second of all, what a huge opportunity if you can sprinkle your foo-foo dust on it, because you're going to stand out amongst everybody else. And so the ability to craft words together will never, ever go out of fashion. Just on LinkedIn for a second, score out of 10 for your level of satisfaction of what you think about that platform. I know that's a really wide question to ask you, but just putting you on the spot and say, go on, give it a score out of 10 for how you see LinkedIn right now. What number would you give it?
Up there with an 8.5 out of 10. I think it could always improve. Now, there's different reasons for that. That could be the platform itself, the technology. It could also be how people use it. I think there's a blurred line where that crossover is.
Yeah.
Some of the frustration with LinkedIn is still people sending out a million pitchy DMs a day.
That's only going to get worse in the short term through AI, of course, isn't it? Because everyone's using the tech and loading the tech up with 1,000 hits.
Yeah, exactly. And to say, right, here's everyone who could possibly fit my ideal customer. I'll just message all of them in 15 seconds.
There's definitely, there's always been bad press around that. There's a short-term shitstorm tsunami that's currently in play. We need to let that just wash through and everyone stop doing it.
But in essence, I love the platform. I think it's got incredible potential. You could have 100 lifetimes and not run out of people on LinkedIn. It's amazing, really. I always say you don't have to go viral on LinkedIn for it to work for you. I always say I wrote a post this week actually. If you write a post and you get 7 likes and 3 comments, you can get a little bit disheartened. But if 7 people came up to you after you did a talk or after this and went, "Can I shake your hand, Matt? I really enjoyed that talk." You'd feel pretty good about yourself.
We do miss that point, don't we?
Yeah, and lots of people game the system with in whatever way you want to think like that. But some people have got a lot of engagement that is not necessarily valuable of any value to them because funny enough they were talking last night actually about some people's have got a strategy to there's a huge increase in use in sort of India and places like that. There's millions of people in India using the platform for a whole variety of lots of very credible ways, but by actively networking there, if that isn't your target market, for example, it doesn't have to be India, it could be anyone else, but just somewhere where you can scale quickly doesn't necessarily mean you might have lots of engagement and lots of likes, lots of connections, followers, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to add any value to you. If you're suddenly getting loads of people in, you know, somewhere that doesn't even speak your language and have no interest in your offer, it's just nice ego stuff that you've got loads of likes and engagement, but it's pointless for you. Just focus on quality over quantity. That's always in any sales, in any marketing, in any business. Focus on quality and don't worry about the ego of having huge engagement. Some of the guys last night haven't even got massive followings, but they're doing serious numbers. That's the important thing.
I like that. And what's his just going back to your client base? I mean, I love when you write your posts on LinkedIn because they follow a kind of a set pattern. Do you have a different style depending on your client?
Yes, I do. Depending on their offer, what they want to do, what they want to achieve. Typically, there's kind of a sweet spot, I guess, for the amount of copy you need to create to get the story across. It's very hard to do it in 2 paragraphs sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's relevant. But I guess I have got a style of creating content, a format that I've been working on myself and refined. And I continue research with the other top creators and look at what they're doing. And I always say, when we were at school, it used to be called copying. These days, it's called modelling. You model the best people, to see what they're doing. And everyone's done that since the beginning of time. Really, you find out what works, put your own slant approach, tactics, lessons, and learnings from the good and bad that you've done, and just keep on refining. And that's what I always try and do. So you never get to the destination. It's always an ongoing journey. But that's what makes it interesting. As long as you've got that appetite, that enthusiasm for the platform and for the content you create, it makes it fun. I don't mind doing
it's
it
still
at all.
the tried and tested formula, I guess, when it comes to getting the most out of the platform. Is it, Stefan? It's showing up consistently and delivering value and having the
Authenticity and all those
content,
things.
all that kind of stuff, right? So that will never change. You've got to be consistent.
I think it just goes back to, look at our early days in our career when you start talking to customers. You don't talk to your customer once a year. And your boss, when you start out, probably said, make sure you keep in touch with those clients. Don't be the one that just misses out on the order because your competitor got there because you didn't call them.
Correct.
It's showing up in whatever that looks like. It could be when I started out in sales, I was literally knocking on doors, and getting in the car, parking up to somewhere that I had 10 places I could go and knock on the door and say, hi, how's it going? And do that every week. And that didn't always convert, as you know, but it's just a numbers game of making sure, you turn up at the right time. And it's the same on LinkedIn. Long as you keep showing up, everyone I work with, I think without exception, has never commented on any of my posts. Not one. I've got a couple of clients who like some of my posts, but they never comment. But they always DM.
Yeah,
That's where the gold is. That's
it is,
what it's
and
about.
You've mentioned this on other podcasts as well, and I'm sure we talked about it, a few years back when we did that. We'll come on to that in a second. That those LinkedIn posts that we had a conversation around, and whether they were right or wrong is kind of irrelevant. But at that time, we were happy to destroy them. But we will talk about a couple of them. In fact, we should go there now. So, and I want to come there from a position of not to ridicule or anything like that. I'm coming at it from a position of what has changed. Because 5 years ago, we sat in your offices in Watford and we said, let's just put something out. Let's talk about LinkedIn posts we see that perhaps are actually costing somebody who's posting them more than likes. Actually, their reputation is being destroyed, if you like, without realizing it. Ironically, I put a post out. Just put a podcast out about a lack of self-awareness. That was one part of the podcast, and in a funny kind of way, it's almost is a lack of self-awareness, or could be seen as such, if you post something that doesn't work. However, of course, I'm contradicting myself here, because it's only doesn't work for the people it doesn't work for. It probably works for your ideal client, right? But if I think back to some of those posts, we had a dig at people that promote themselves through testimonials. It still goes on. I did one myself a couple of weeks ago. And so I don't think there's anything specifically wrong about showing a testimonial that someone said about you on your behalf. But we were clearly quite rattled about it at the time.
There's nothing wrong with that stuff. But it's like people who continually post about smashing records, biggest deal in the century, all that kind of overly positive stuff. Now, I love positivity. I've got no problem with that. But it's never the whole picture. Like we said at the very start of our conversation, that there's good and bad in business. And I think that's what people relate to. If anything, they relate to the struggle and what you did to overcome this problem and what that problem was and how it affected you, maybe personally, maybe a business, maybe both. I think that's what people want to see, the whole picture now. And I think people are getting more used to that. And what I find actually with my clients, and the reason they come to me, is most of them feel quite awkward about writing that stuff down themselves, the good and the bad.
Okay.
But what they're quite happy to do is chat like this.
Just talk about it, yeah.
Talk about it. I can talk about it, but actually sitting down and starting to write, they sort of cringe out a little bit, and they don't get it done. They sort of think, oh no, that feels a bit. Do I really want to share that? But once they start articulating it to me, and then I write it for them, they go, oh, actually, that feels a lot easier now that you've done it. And I go, actually, I can read that, and it's almost third person, even though it's their own story. So I think really that's where it's growing. I think more people have become more used to that. The people who are using the platform well, that authenticity of the struggle, the relatability, and I may look like I'm doing really well, but actually I'm, that person's in the same position as me. Not necessarily talk about me, but just talk about anyone who writes a post that has got an issue or a good thing, a bad thing, but it's something that other people they're experiencing. Yep. Sharing that kind of real life stuff is so important, I think, and it's not just all the good stuff. Share the real life and the journey, document it. Be brave enough to share that in public, and I think that's hard for a lot of people.
There's no doubt about it. There's been a seismic shift towards that level of personality and honesty, if you like. I don't know if some of that has been driven by the period in lockdown, where people have got a sort of slightly different take on life, or it's just the natural evolution of LinkedIn as a platform. But you're absolutely right. There's far more. Yes, there's far more personality stuff on there, but there's far more honesty and I was going to say believability. Is that a word? Believability? It must be. If it's not, just made it up. There's a lot more believability these days on some of the posts. Yes, there are a few people I think that cross the line, and you think, yeah, that never happened. But it's few and far between now, I think. Because I think the other thing I'd say, and maybe it'd be interesting to get your take on this, is the bar has been significantly raised because we are so overloaded with information these days. We scroll at a much quicker rate than we scrolled 2 or 3 years ago. It takes a lot to grab your attention, doesn't it? And so
it does.
And I think that's a good thing, because it means that when you do put content out there, it's got to be really useful and helpful for the other person that reads it. Otherwise, you're not going to stop them in the street.
I mean, I think that's relevant to everyone who's fighting for attention, be it even the old school printed newspaper. They're still doing it. They're doing it on their website. They're doing it on the newspapers themselves. They've still got that hook, that headline to try and draw people in. Part of me struggles with that sort of over sensationalism, if that's the right word, of being overly dramatic to try and hook people in, and then actually is a bit of a letdown. I still think a lot of people, once they start to get to know someone who's credible, you haven't got to go, how I made £1 million in 30 seconds, my secret's revealed, or something, like on the front of the Sun. It's nice to do some things that work well for certain people, but I think there's a balance there. You've got to try and draw the reader's eye, because, as you said, it's so easy to go, "Oh, that's boring." Might be the best article you've ever read, best post ever, but unless you actually get people to read. But I just don't believe you've got to be overly dramatic in
No,
your first line, your first paragraph, that kind of devalues what you're talking about, and actually the credibility of it. There's a balance in there, I think, Matt, and I think it's very difficult to get right, and it's one of those things still. And every post I write, someone think, "Oh, I've really nailed that," and then it's like, "Oh no, that didn't work." Other times I'm not so sure, and it goes really well. And that's the nature of social media. And it doesn't mean your post is always bad. It just means it hasn't got the right attention at the right time, the right people liking and commenting to suddenly spread that, and all of a sudden, that virality thing is weird. I've had posts go viral, and massive numbers that are like mind blowing. And I look back and I think, was it the hook? Was it the content? Was it the subject? Was it the timing? And I think it's probably all of those things. It's like it creates a perfect storm,
yeah,
and I don't believe in being deliberately obtuse or confrontational, controversial, just to get loads and loads of views. It's
no.
it's
Well, it's back
it's
to your
done a
point. At the
lot.
end of the day, if we pare it back, I love the expression used there, which is it's at the end of the day, it's about attention, isn't it? There is some kind of link somewhere to those people that post, should we say, consistently on LinkedIn, where they're effectively saying, "Look at me," and for whatever reason, "Look at me." But let's use lead generation as an obvious choice. Certainly, why I'm on LinkedIn is to get in front of my ideal client and say, let's
Mm.
have a conversation, or try and at least warm up the opportunity to have that conversation. So, on that point, though, is Stefan, do you have that ideal client? Is just describe a typical client of yours?
So the first thing is, everyone I work with has to see the value in the platform itself, see the potential with it. If I never try and sell the platform to people, because that's never going to be a long lasting relationship if they don't really get it. They've got to be someone who maybe doesn't post, um, but has always looked at it and gone, "Yeah, I really should get around to doing that." And they dabble every now and then. They share a corporate update once every 3 months, and it might get good traction because they've got a big, they might be head of a decent business that's credible. And often it's, their own team that see it, or even maybe their customers or people who admire them. There's nothing wrong with that, but it just shows you, if you really put effort into it, how massive that could become, that personal brand.
Do they,
But
just on
really,
that point
it's
though? Do you find though, with, I assume probably your client base is slightly high net worth, or they're sort of C-suite level, who just don't have the time to develop and nurture their personal brand, so that's why they're outsourcing it to an expert like you. But do you find you have to go through a sort of sign off procedure, or are they basically saying, "Stefan, look, I don't care, just keep me credible, over to you"?
everything I post. One of the most important things to me, and I take it as an honour, really, that people trust me with their profiles. So I make sure that everything I do is credible for that person. But everything I post is always goes through an approval process, without exception, because I just want to make sure that they're 100% happy. I don't want to go, "What the hell have you done?" All that kind of nightmare scenario that no one wants. "Oh my God, I've made a mistake." Everything, I use a platform that is linked to someone's LinkedIn account, but it's a scheduling and approval tool. So I send them a link. It's not on their profile yet. It's in this middle ground. They can comment. They can just click approve, or they can say, luckily, I don't think I've ever had someone say, "No, I don't like it." It might be the wrong timing. It might say, "Actually, we're launching something else. Don't say that until a week after." But there's a tool that I use that people can add. "Oh, I didn't think of, why don't you put this point in here? That might be relevant." But it creates that collaboration, and that's what I really like. And that's how you get to learn more about the client as well. And it just helps them feel comfortable that before it's posted, they can check it, they approve it, and then I schedule it for them. So yeah, there's a lot to be said for that trust. So everyone I work with runs a business. They're bloody busy. Whether it's you and
Sure.
I running our own one man bands, or it's someone with a massive business, it takes an awful lot of your time. No matter how big your team, everyone wants a piece of you. So it's easy to come up with one or two piece of content, but to be consistent on LinkedIn is effort and it's work, it's graft, and you need creativity, you need some skill set, and you need the time to commit to it. So how I work is that I interview my clients on a call like this, which is recorded and transcribed as I talked about earlier, and
Mm.
I can then use that. Early days with the client, I write one or two posts after the interview just to make sure they feel comfortable that it's the right tone and in their voice. But once I get a bit more of understanding, of both of us do, I tend to write sort of batches, maybe a week or even 2 weeks at a time. So it may be 15, 20 minutes a week of just reading through posts, either clicking tick approve or maybe a slight comment. That's most people have got that amount of time because they can do it on their phone, at their desk or whatever, and just read it through. Yes, 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 and there's a whole week of content done for them, or whatever period of time that they're happy to do. Some people it's a month, um, and for various reasons, some people want more content, some people want less. So there's very much an ongoing collaboration depending on what they've got going on in their business at the time. But that's what's fun. It really just takes that pressure off them, and it just keeps on sharing that content and builds their audience and gains that attention that people are looking for a multiple of reasons. Some people just want to build authority, build an audience. Some people want to generate leads. Some people looking for investors to attract better caliber staff that they can hire. So whatever. There's a whole lot. So we'll get on podcasts like this. There's a whole range of reasons why people want to build that personal brand.
I want to go back to business advice. So, obviously you've spent a long time in business. You mentioned that time. Was it during COVID that you decided you had a bit of a rethink and a pause and a reset? Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you mind me asking, was that the low point, or did you just say, actually, I just need to do something different?
No, it was a low point. I'll be honest. I didn't.
Yeah.
I had no medication or medical treatment, or I wasn't a breakdown. Nothing like that. It was just frustration, really. I think I'm quite a resilient character, but we all sometimes just go, oh, I'm running out of ideas here. I just need to take a break, and that's really, now. I probably was, with hindsight, affected a bit mentally by that because you don't want to admit you can't make it work or defeat or you've just run out of ideas, all those kind of things.
Did
We
you
all
reach
wish
out to
that
your
we had
network
it.
to try and get help and advice?
No, don't be silly. I'm a bloke.
You're a bloke, for crying out loud.
Of
Why would you?
course, of course, it's yeah. I spoke to a couple of friends about it, but look, I'm not pretending I was in a depression or anything like that. I'm not belittling that. It was
No.
just I've had enough. I've got to do something different. I've got to work out what that looks like, and the only way to do that was to step back. Fortunately, I was in a position I could do that, and so I took that breathing space, if you like, to try and have a rethink. And
But how did you figure it out then? If you didn't take advice from anybody else, obviously you're an experienced guy, mate. But what did you ultimately do
so
to get you out of that funk?
it really was my own sort of therapy, or whatever you want to call it, was writing, and that's when I decided I don't really know what else to do. It's just to share this stuff. It was nothing doom and gloom. It was just like, well, I've got tons of experience. I've been around the block a few times. I'll just start telling
Right
people
about
about it.
that? Yeah.
I'll write about that. What else? I can't write about what someone else has done without them really telling me about it. I can only write from my own experiences.
I
And it
love
was
that.
that process.
Yeah.
That's why I value the platform itself, and
Yeah.
this sharing that story is so important if you want to do it, because that's how it gave me a purpose, it gave me a service, it gave me a new business, a new offer, and I could see how that started conversations. It got people talking, it created opportunities for me, and what you always find a solution to an issue by talking to people who have got a similar problem.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I just started talking to people. And as you know full and well, like anything in sales, you don't just want to start getting on the phone and start telling people everything that's wrong with you. I just wanted to ask questions and let people tell me what they're doing. And that's what I did. I did more listening than talking. But on those calls, I just wanted to get to know people, get to understand their issues and get them to open up. And luckily, there was an element of trust because I was quite open about what I was talking about. you're not starting a relationship from cold. There's already an element of trust there because you've exposed a little bit about what you're feeling and what you've done, your backgrounds, all those things. And so the conversations hit the ground running. That's what I love about social media. If you do that, if you are relatively open, not everyone wants to see your holiday pictures or your new puppy or whatever. It's all down to what the individual's comfortable with. But it became sort of a moment of clarity where I go, yeah, this is so much easier to talk to people when they've got a bit of backstory. It might not mean they've seen every post I've done. There might be one or two posts that go, oh, actually, that's interesting. It stimulated them to go, oh, I'm going to write them a message. Let's have a chat. And that's what I did because I invited it, in some of the posts. I'd love to have a chat with you about what you're doing. And people went, oh, okay. And they sent me a message and we got on calls. And I got it wrong a few times, as I said at the start. But from talking to more people and working out who my ideal customer was, what their issues were, what they're looking for, it became much clearer to me and it evolved from there.
There's a lot of vulnerability in that, mate. And it's such a good story to hear. And I guess kudos to obviously yourself, but also to LinkedIn as a platform that if you put stuff out there and you're willing to be honest and open, and don't be surprised by what comes back, because there are some good people out there that obviously can, I wouldn't say point you.
There's amazing people,
give
Matt.
you feedback, right?
There's amazing people out there, and it's amazing relationships you can build. I mean, like the guys last night I met, I'd met one of them before, but the other guys I've never actually met. But
Yeah.
when you actually get to know each other on LinkedIn, not even phone calls, just DMs and seeing people in the comments, reading their posts, comments on their posts and stuff like that. You do feel like you get to know these people, and there's some incredible talent in the world, and it's so good to actually connect with people and to build those relationships that without a platform like LinkedIn, it's very hard to do.
So let me just pick off a couple of business related questions as we come to the end. So if you had to go back, start your business from scratch, and you were only allowed to keep one of the skills that you've effectively learnt over the last 15 years. So you've got to go back, start again. Sorry about that, mate. You go and start another business. What one skill do you think would serve you best?
I think the really important thing in whatever business you're in these days, there's so many businesses, there's so much emphasis that is missed, I think, but it's so important about the relationship, being able to, it obviously depends on, if you're a non-customer facing online business, it's very different. But for most people I talk to, whatever your business is, there's still a huge element in personal relationship, and the ability to pick up the phone or start a conversation in whatever way you do it, via LinkedIn, email, a cold call, a networking or an event or whatever. It's to build rapport and to be able to ask questions to get people to open up. Now, I don't pretend to be an expert in it, but I think it's so much value in being able to listen and then just think, actually, yeah, I need to scratch that itch a little bit more, and to find out what's going on with that person, because that's where you find out what their pain points are and their issues, and you try and find a solution if it's relevant to both parties. That's how you do business. And I think that skill, even in this internet technology driven world, the ability to talk to people and, more importantly, listen to people is absolutely essential, I think. If you're on the front line of growing and scaling a business, relationships, it doesn't matter if it could be with your investors, your team, your customers, your partners, whatever it is, that skill to engage with people, I think, is more important than ever.
I 100% agree with that. If you've got the ability to start a conversation with a complete stranger, I actually think that is, first of all, that's a real talent to be able to do that well. And secondly, I totally agree with you that good things come from conversations, whether it's conversions or relationships or advice. It can only happen if you start a conversation with somebody, and actually someone's got to go first. And the skill of going first, I think, is one that would serve everybody really well. So in partnership with that one skill you've got, which is opening a relationship, starting a conversation, if I gave you 10 grand to invest in that startup business, knowing what you know about business and life in general, so I'm giving you a £10,000 budget, how would you spend that money in to help you in the first few months, first year of startup? What would you buy? How would you spend it?
Going back to my old days, the amount of times I met people and who'd had a logo designed, had their business cards and letterheads printed, then that evolved a bit into having their website done, and they hadn't even spoken to a potential customer at that stage. And I think those days have very much gone. Still, people getting websites spent building expensive websites before they've really proven their offer. But I think for me, the skills are the most important thing. It's, whatever it is, it could be sales, it could be marketing, it could be copywriting, it could be anything, but something that you can use for on the long term is where I'd invest the money. But with what I know in my experience as well, I'd also squirrel some of it away, because phase two of that, you think, oh, well, I'll invest all that in, let's say, training, and that takes you to a point, and you rapidly come to the level, actually, I need to go again. I need a little bit more in reserve to do that. I'd be, going back 10 years, I'll probably spend all of that in one go. Right, let's go for it, hell for leather. With a bit more experience, I'm a little bit more cautious, and I like to then be able to pivot if necessary, because I've spent fortunes on on courses, on training, and all kinds of aspects. Some of it was bloody brilliant. Some of it, I wasted the money because thought, oh, that'd be good. And then for whatever reason, either didn't finish the course or didn't like it. But I still think the skill set, invest in yourself, is more important, because we can run businesses. I'm sitting in my front room at the moment. We can hire offices and get all the logos and brands, all that stuff done. And for some businesses that might be relevant. But I think it's actually keep it simple, make sure you've got the skill set and the training, so you can then replicate that and scale that. And that's what I spend the money on myself or the whatever small team I had, invest in them.
That's a great answer, actually. I was expecting you to come up with some kind of tech stack or some sort of practical, and maybe that bit that you squirrel away, you will spend on that. But I really like that idea of training, actually. That's not because I'm in that space, far from it. I just actually think that, it's cliche, and it's one of those motivational quotes that you and I destroyed 5 years ago on the last podcast. But the best investment you make is the one you make in yourself, right?
Well, I always say, the best in the world have, Tiger Woods has still got multiple coaches in every part of his game or his life, his health. If someone like that, who's the best ever at a sport, has still got coaches, what are you and I doing thinking we don't need a coach? It's so relevant that you can always be better. And I think I learned some years ago, Matt, that I think the value is in life really is that attitude of being a lifelong learner. If you keep that, it keeps you young, it keeps you sharp, and it keeps you trying to get better. Now, it doesn't mean we always do, but the important thing is that effort to keep trying to move forward, bit by bit by bit. It doesn't have to be massive overnight change. It's just that continual improvement and learning and lessons and evolution in what you do. I think for me, that's the most important thing. And I always recall something I learned quite early on. If you ask someone how they did something in a business, and they told you, and you said why, and they said, well, we've always done it like that. That's a red flag straight away. Well, question it. Why is it? It might be the case it's still the best way of doing it, but always question it. And I think a good coach, a coach could be a book, it could be a podcast, it could be a LinkedIn post, it could be someone who's one-on-one with you. But if you always learn stuff from as you go, continually have that mindset that you could always be a little bit better, I think you'd be all right.
It's a fabulous way to end the podcast. I'm really grateful that you've taken the time to come on. 3rd episode. What's the best place? Should I send them to the link in the show notes for you to find you on LinkedIn?
I think LinkedIn, because I always say I try and practice what I preach. I try and share my own story, my journey, my experience, my skills, my tips, for what I've learnt. I try and offer value. It's all on LinkedIn. That's where to find me.
Love it, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure. So this is episode 65. I think I need to invite you back for the 100th. So the 100th episode will be you.
I love that.
I've got to go some to get there. That's 35 episodes away. It's going to be a year or so. But if you're up for it, I'll have you back on.
100%. Always love talking to you, Matt. It's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you for having me on a 3rd time. It's been great fun.
Thanks, mate. Really appreciate your time.